The world outside was a canvas of chaos, painted in furious strokes of gray and green. Hurricane Esmeralda, a late-season anomaly, wasn't just a storm, it was a living, breathing entity, tearing through the coastal town of Seabrook with a primal scream. Rain lashed horizontally, stinging like icy needles, and the wind howled a relentless, mournful tune that threatened to rip the very foundations from their moorings. Power lines danced erratically, spitting sparks before plunging vast swathes of the town into oppressive darkness inside the rattling confines of his K-9 unit. Officer Ben Carter gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. The wipers fought a losing battle against the deluge, smearing the view into an impressionistic blur of motion. Beside him, in the specially designed backseat, Rex, his German Shepherd partner, was unusually still. Usually. Rex was a bundle of coiled energy, even during routine patrols, but tonight, he seemed to sense the immense, brooding power of the storm. His ears, typically alert, were slightly flattened, and his deep brown eyes, usually brimming with intelligence and playful mischief, held a depth of quiet concern. Ben glanced at his partner, a wave of affection washing over him. Rex wasn't just a dog, he was family, a confidant, and an extension of Ben's own senses. They'd been through a lot together, countless patrols, tense standoffs, and the quiet camaraderie that only partners, human or canine, truly understood. Tonight, however, felt different. There was a raw, untamed fury to Esmeralda that made even Ben, a 20-year veteran of the force, feel a prickle of unease. The police scanner crackled to life, a flurry of static and urgent voices reporting downed trees, flooded intersections, and a rising number of emergency calls. Unit 7, we have multiple reports of flash flooding near the old industrial park. Advise extreme caution. Repeat, extreme caution, Ben acknowledged. His voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. Copy that. Dispatch. Unit 7 proceeding towards the industrial park, assessing conditions. He steered the heavy vehicle carefully, the tires fighting for purchase on the slick, waterlogged asphalt. Every gust of wind was a physical shove, threatening to push them off course. The streets, normally bustling, were eerily deserted. The few brave souls who hadn't evacuated wisely hunkered down in their homes. The air was thick with the smell of rain, damp earth, and an underlying metallic tang of electricity gone awry as they navigated the submerged roads. The silence in the K-9 unit, broken only by the roar of the storm and the intermittent crackle of the radio, felt heavier than usual. Ben knew their duty was to serve and protect, no matter the conditions. But tonight, the line between courage and recklessness felt dangerously thin. The journey through Seabrook's submerged arteries was a test of Ben's seasoned driving skills and Rex's unwavering focus. Each turn was a gamble against unseen debris and deepening water. The old industrial park loomed ahead, a skeletal collection of abandoned warehouses and rusted fences, usually avoided even on the brightest days. Tonight, it felt like a forgotten realm, swallowed by the storm's wrath. The wind howled through broken window panes, creating a symphony of groans and creaks that sent shivers down Ben's spine. Suddenly, Rex shifted. It wasn't a casual movement, it was a jolt, a sharp, almost violent twitch of his powerful body. His ears shot up, swiveling independently, straining against the cacophony of the storm. A low, guttural growl rumbled deep in his chest, a sound Ben rarely heard unless a genuine threat was present. "What is it, boy?" Ben murmured, his eyes scanning the gloom beyond the windshield. There was nothing but the relentless rain and the blurred outlines of decaying structures. "Just the storm. Old man. Nerves are a bit frayed, huh?" Rex ignored him, his growl intensified, becoming a persistent, urgent whine. He began to nose at the divider separating the front and back seats, his dark eyes fixed on something Ben couldn't yet perceive. Then, with a forceful grunt, he launched himself against the divider, whimpering, his body language screaming distress. He wasn't just agitated, he was in a state of profound alarm, pulling frantically towards the passenger side door, towards the dark, waterlogged expanse. Ben knew Rex, knew his tells, his habits, his instincts. This wasn't storm anxiety, this was something else entirely. Rex's K9 training was rigorous, his senses honed to an almost supernatural degree. If Rex was reacting like this, there was a reason, a compelling, critical reason. All right, easy, boy, Ben said, his voice firm but reassuring. He slowed the vehicle, peering intently through the distorted glass. They were passing a particularly dilapidated section of the fence line that bordered the forgotten lot of an old textile factory. Trees, stripped bare of their leaves, clawed at the sky like skeletal fingers. Rubbish, churned by the floodwaters, swirled in eddies around rusted metal scraps. Then he saw it, a faint, almost imperceptible shape. It was huddled low to the ground, partially obscured by a fallen corrugated metal sheet and the swirling debris. The rain plastered it down, making it blend almost seamlessly with the dark. Wet landscape. It was small, no bigger than a mid-sized dog. And it was undeniably still. A chill, colder than the driving rain, crept up Ben's spine. No, it couldn't be. Not out here. Not in this. He slammed on the brakes, the K9 unit skidding slightly on the slick pavement before coming to a stop. The beam of his headlights cut through the murky light, illuminating the area with a stark, unsettling clarity. Rex was a frenzy of motion now, barking short, sharp barks that echoed eerily over the storm's roar. He scrabbled at the door handle, desperate to get out. Stay here, Rex. Stay. Ben commanded. Unbuckling his seatbelt, he grabbed his heavy-duty flashlight and a spare utility knife, his heart pounding with a nameless dread. The situation felt wrong, profoundly wrong. No animal, no living creature should be out here in this, especially not one that appeared so motionless. Stepping out of the vehicle was like stepping into a cold, violent waterfall. The wind immediately assaulted him, threatening to rip the uniform right off his back. The water was already up to his shins, icy and turbulent, pulling at his boots. He pushed against the wind, each step a struggle, the beam of his flashlight cutting a trembling path through the downpour as he drew closer. The faint shape began to resolve itself. It was indeed an animal, a dog. But the way it was positioned, the stillness, the utter lack of response to his approach. A knot tightened in Ben's stomach. He expected to see a stray, perhaps injured and seeking shelter. But this wasn't just a stray. This was something else. Something far more sinister. The water around the dog was churning, rising steadily. The animal was partially submerged, its fur matted and dark, clinging to its skeletal frame, and it was clearly alive. But barely. A faint, shallow breath ghosted from its nostrils, and its body trembled violently. Not just from the cold, but from sheer terror. Its eyes, wide and glassy, reflected the beam of Ben's flashlight with a horrifying emptiness, devoid of hope, filled only with a deep, chilling despair. Then Ben saw it, the glint of metal against the rusted fence post, a heavy, thick chain secured around the dog's neck. It was taut, holding the animal in place, preventing any escape from the rising floodwaters, from the brutal assault of the storm. The realization hit Ben like a physical blow. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. This was an act of unspeakable cruelty, a surge of white-hot anger, cold and sharp, cut through Ben's professional composure. How could anyone do this? How could a human being tie a defenseless animal to a fence post in the middle of a raging hurricane, condemning it to a slow, agonizing death? His breath hitched, a guttural sound escaping his lips. It wasn't just animal cruelty, it was attempted murder. And he, Ben Carter, was not about to let it succeed. His gaze hardened, his jaw set. He had found them. Now, he would save them. The sight of the chained dog, trembling violently in the rising floodwaters, ignited a furious, protective instinct within Ben. His professional detachment, usually a strong shield, crumbled in the face of such raw, deliberate cruelty. The storm's roar seemed to fade, replaced by the frantic beat of his own heart and the dog's shallow, desperate gasps. "Hey there, easy now," Ben murmured, forcing his voice to be calm. Despite the tremor in his hands, he knelt in the icy water, which was now lapping at his waist. Oblivious to the biting cold and the punishing rain, the dog flinched, its head snapping back, eyes wide with terror. But it made no attempt to snarl or bite. It was too weak, too broken for aggression, only capable of a profound, bone-deep fear. The dog was a medium-sized mix, perhaps a shepherd or hound blend, though its true features were obscured by a thick, matted coat caked with mud and debris. Its ribs protruded starkly under its wet fur, a testament to prolonged starvation. Every shallow breath it took was a visible struggle, its emaciated body shivering uncontrollably. Not just from the frigid water, but from an almost palpable exhaustion that spoke of days, perhaps weeks, of neglect and exposure. Ben carefully reached out a gloved hand, moving slowly, deliberately, to avoid startling the terrified animal further. "It's okay, buddy, I'm here to help." He could feel the dog's warmth, a fading ember against the chilling water, and the frantic thumping of its heart against his fingertips. As his hand gently brushed its head, the dog flinched again, but then, miraculously, it leaned into his touch. A faint, almost imperceptible tremor running through its body. It was a gesture of desperate, fragile trust. He examined the chain. It was thick, rusted, and wrapped several times around the weathered wooden fence post. Secured with a heavy-duty padlock, the chain bit into the dog's neck. Not tightly enough to choke it immediately, but certainly digging into its flesh, chafing already raw skin. The cruelty was meticulous, designed for slow suffering. The perpetrator had ensured the dog couldn't free itself, couldn't reach higher ground, couldn't even lie down comfortably. "Damn you," Ben muttered under his breath. His jaw clenched. His anger was a hot, bitter taste in his mouth. He pulled out his utility knife, its blade glinting faintly in the beam of his flashlight. He would have to cut the post or try to force the lock. Cutting the chain directly was too risky with the dog so close. So fragile, as he worked. Rex's frantic barks from the K-9 unit continued, a distressed symphony echoing through the storm. Ben could hear the frantic scratching at the window, the whimpers. Rex understood. He felt the animal's plight as deeply as Ben did. The wooden post was old and rotten, softened by years of neglect and the current deluge. Ben dug the knife into the waterlogged wood, twisting, applying all his strength. Splinters flew, mingling with the driving rain. It was slow, arduous work, made more difficult by the surging water and the powerful wind. He could feel his own body growing cold, his muscles aching from the strain. But he wouldn't stop. He couldn't. Minutes stretched into an eternity, with each painful tear of wood. The dog watched him with those wide, haunting eyes, a silent plea. Its breathing became shallower, more ragged. Ben worked faster, pushing past his own fatigue. Finally, with a resounding crack, a section of the post gave way. The heavy chain, still attached to the broken wood. Now hung loose, Ben carefully, gently, unfastened the chain from around the dog's neck. The raw, chafed skin underneath was a stark, angry red. He threw the heavy chain and the piece of wood into the swirling water. A gesture of defiance against the cruelty. "You're free, buddy," he whispered, stroking the dog's head. The dog leaned into his hand again, trembling, then tried to push its nose against his chest, a weak, desperate nuzzle. It was a dog that understood gratitude, despite all it had endured, carefully. Ben scooped the dog into his arms. It was surprisingly light, skeletal beneath its soaked fur, its body limp and unresponsive. He tucked it close to his chest, shielding it from the worst of the storm, feeling the rapid, fragile beat of its heart against his own as he cradled the dog. A faint glint caught his eye. It was around the dog's neck, partially hidden by the matted, filthy fur, not a collar, but something smaller. Metallic, almost like a pendant or a small, ornate tag, but not a typical identification tag. It was partially embedded in the wet. Tangled hair, dark with grime, making it hard to discern its exact shape. He didn't have time to inspect it closely now. The dog's survival was paramount. He began the arduous trek back to the K9 unit. Each step a cautious negotiation through the murky, chest-high water. The dog lay motionless in his arms, its head resting against his shoulder. A silent, fragile burden. Rex's barks intensified into a chorus of excited whines as they approached the vehicle. As Ben reached the door, Rex was practically vibrating with anticipation. Pawing at the window, desperate to see the rescued animal, Ben carefully opened the door. And Rex, after a quick, excited sniff of the air, immediately settled down, making room on the back seat for Ben to gently lay the rescued dog down. He draped a spare K9 blanket, usually reserved for Rex after a long track, over the shivering animal. The dog let out a soft whimper of relief as the warmth enveloped it. "Good boy, Rex. Good boy." Ben praised his partner, whose nose was now nudging the rescued dog gently. A soft, comforting sound rumbling in his throat. It was a deep, empathetic connection between the two canines. As Ben got back into the driver's seat, water dripping from his uniform, soaking the interior. He took one last look at the abandoned landscape. The storm raged on, but the chilling tableau of the chained dog was seared into his memory. He vowed then and there that he would find the monster responsible for this. But first, he had to get this dog to safety. He pulled the K9 unit into a slow, careful turn, heading for the nearest emergency vet clinic. The metallic object still a faint, intriguing glint at the back of his mind. He silently named the dog, a name born of the desperate hope that had driven him through the storm hope. The drive to the emergency veterinary clinic was a race against time and the relentless storm. Ben kept glancing in his rearview mirror, his eyes fixed on Hope. The small dog lay motionless under the blanket, a fragile bundle of life clinging precariously to existence. Rex, surprisingly, remained quiet, his keen senses undoubtedly aware of the rescued dog's delicate state. He lay with his head on his paws, his gaze occasionally shifting to Hope. A silent vigil. The rain hammered against the K9 unit, each drop a percussive reminder of the fury they had just escaped. Ben navigated the flooded streets with a singular focus. The image of Hope chained to the fence post burned into his mind. The sheer malice of it churned his stomach. Who could be so utterly devoid of humanity? As they pulled into the well-lit, relatively dry parking lot of the Seabrook Animal Emergency Clinic, Ben felt a wave of profound relief wash over him. The clinic, a modern, bustling facility, was a beacon of hope in the storm-swept night. He carefully parked and quickly but gently lifted Hope, still wrapped in the blanket. From the back seat, the moment Ben stepped through the clinic doors, the warm, sterile air offered a stark contrast to the storm outside. A young vet tech with kind eyes and a name tag that read, Sarah immediately rushed over, her face etched with concern at the sight of the waterlogged officer and the tiny, still form in his arms. Officer Carter. What do we have here? Sarah's voice was gentle. Professional? Found her tied to a fence post in the industrial park. Sarah, in the storm. Severely emaciated, hypothermic. Looks like she's been out there for a while, Ben explained, his voice tight with suppressed emotion. She's barely clinging on. Sarah didn't hesitate. Right this way. Let's get her on a warming pad and get some fluids into her. Dr. Evans is just finishing up with a trauma case, but he can see her immediately. They moved swiftly into an examination room. The air buzzed with quiet efficiency. Sarah carefully took Hope from Ben's arms, her movements practiced and gentle. As she unwrapped the blanket, the full extent of Hope's neglect became agonizingly clear. Every bone was visible beneath her sodden, matted fur. Her paws were raw and inflamed, her nails overgrown. She was a ghost of a dog, as Sarah began to meticulously check Hope's vitals. Cleaning away some of the mud and debris, Ben noticed the metallic object around Hope's neck more clearly. It wasn't a standard dog tag, nor was it a simple pendant. It was a small, tarnished locket, almost hidden beneath the thick, filthy fur that was plastered to her neck. It was old, intricate in its design, and seemed almost fused to her coat from years of grime and neglect. Wait, Ben said, leaning closer. What's that around her neck? Sarah paused, her fingers gently parting the matted fur. Oh, wow, it looks like some kind of old locket. It's pretty caked on there. She carefully worked around the object, trying not to disturb the fragile dog further. It's really embedded. We'll need to clean her up thoroughly before we can get a proper look at it, or even remove it if it's irritating her skin. Just then, Dr. Evans, a seasoned veterinarian with a calm demeanor and kind eyes, entered the room. He quickly assessed Hope, his brow furrowed with concern. Severe hypothermia, malnutrition, dehydration, and those paws. He murmured, his fingers gently probing. She's a fighter, though. Let's get her on IV fluids, warming pads, and some pain relief. Sarah, get a blood panel, and let's start slowly with some nutrient paste once she's stable enough. As they worked, a sense of quiet desperation filled the room. Every movement was precise, every word soft. Ben stood back, feeling helpless, his heart aching for the small creature. Rex, who had been allowed into the room, lay by Ben's feet, his gaze never leaving Hope. A soft, reassuring whine occasionally escaped him, a silent plea for her to hold on. Later, after Hope had been stabilized in an oxygen cage with warming blankets, and IV fluids were steadily dripping into her frail body, Ben and Sarah stood by, watching. Hope was still barely responsive, but her breathing was more even, less labored. She's in critical condition. Officer, Dr. Evans said, joining them. But she's tough. We'll do everything we can. Thank you. Doctor? Both of you, Ben said, his voice husky. He pointed to the locket. Any thoughts on that? It's not a typical ID tag, is it? Dr. Evans peered at it. No, definitely not. It looks quite old, almost antique. I wouldn't recommend trying to remove it just yet. We need to focus on her health. Once she's stronger, we can clean her up properly and see what it is. For now, it's just another mystery. Ben nodded, a strange feeling of unease settling in. The locket seemed out of place, almost anachronistic on such a neglected animal. It hinted at a story, a past that went far beyond mere abandonment. His mind, trained to observe and connect disparate pieces of information, began to whir. Why would someone leave a valuable or sentimental locket on a dog they were clearly abandoning to die? It didn't make sense, unless it wasn't them who left it. Or it was left for a different reason entirely. He thought of the deserted industrial park, the raging storm, the sheer isolation of the area. It wasn't a place where someone would accidentally lose a locket. This was deliberate. This was a choice. And the choice was to tie the dog to the fence, allowing it to drown or succumb to the elements. The locket, in this context, felt less like a forgotten item and more like a deliberate clue. Or perhaps a cruel taunt. Ben felt a familiar investigative spark ignite within him. This wasn't just an animal cruelty case anymore. The locket, the extreme nature of the abandonment, the remote location, it all suggested something deeper, something more sinister than a simple case of neglect. He had seen enough in his career to know that animal abuse often correlated with other, darker crimes. He pulled out his phone, making a mental note to check for missing person reports, particularly those involving children. From years ago, it was a long shot, but the locket, with its antique feel, hinted at a past that might be decades old. The girl in the photo, if there was one, would likely be an adult now. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that this locket was more than just an anomaly. It was a silent witness to something terrible. He looked at Hope, still and fragile in the oxygen cage, her small body fighting for every breath. He had named her for the desperate flicker of life he had found in her eyes, the sheer resilience that had allowed her to survive the storm, at least until he arrived. Now, he hoped she would also be a beacon of hope for uncovering the truth, whatever that truth might be. The storm outside continued its destructive dance, but inside the clinic, a new kind of storm was brewing, a storm of questions, suspicions, and a determined pursuit of justice. The morning after Hurricane Esmeralda retreated, leaving behind a scarred landscape but a fragile calm. The Seabrook Animal Emergency Clinic was a hub of quiet activity. Hope, though still weak, had made it through the night. She was a testament to the tenacious will to survive. Ben, after a brief restless sleep at home, was back at the clinic, unable to shake the image of her frail form or the nagging mystery of the locket. Rex, ever his shadow, lay patiently by his feet in the waiting area, a silent, comforting presence. Sarah, the kind vet tech from the night before, greeted Ben with a tired but hopeful smile. Good news, Officer Carter. Hope's vitals are stable. She took a little nutrient paste this morning. It's a slow process, but she's definitely fighting. Relief washed over Ben. That's excellent news. Sarah, she's a brave one. He paused, then gestured towards the treatment area. Any chance we can get a closer look at that locket now? Sarah nodded. Dr. Evans said it's fine. As long as we're gentle, she's still very sensitive. They moved into a quieter room where Hope lay on a soft bed. A clean, dry blanket draped over her. Her eyes, though still wary, held a faint spark that hadn't been there the night before. Her matted fur, still damp in places, now looked less like a shroud and more like a challenge to be overcome. Sarah, with practiced hands, began to gently clean the area around Hope's neck. She used a warm, damp cloth, carefully working away the layers of grime and mud that had fused the locket to the dog's fur. Ben watched intently, a strange mix of anticipation and trepidation building within him. This small, unassuming object felt like a key, though he didn't yet know what lock it might open. As the dirt was slowly cleared away, the locket began to reveal its true form. It wasn't just old, it was exquisitely crafted. The metal, though tarnished, showed traces of what might have once been silver or pewter. Intricately engraved with swirling patterns and delicate floral motifs, it was clearly a piece of fine jewelry, utterly out of place on a starved, abandoned street dog. Wow, Sarah breathed, her fingers tracing the design. This is beautiful. It looks like something from a long time ago. like an heirloom. Ben leaned in closer. The locket was roughly the size of a large coin, with a small clasp on one side. His heart rate quickened. Can you can you open it? Sarah hesitated, then gently attempted to pry open the clasp. It was stiff, rusted, and resistant, testament to its age and prolonged exposure to the elements. She tried again, carefully applying pressure with her thumb, with a tiny, almost inaudible click. The locket finally sprang open. Inside, nestled within the tarnished metal, lay a faded miniature photograph. It was difficult to make out clearly at first, but as Ben brought his flashlight closer, the image resolved a young girl, no older than 6 or 7, with bright, laughing eyes and a mischievous smile. Her hair was pulled back with a simple ribbon, and she wore a plain, somewhat old-fashioned dress. She looked happy, innocent, and utterly out of place in the context of Hope's suffering. Beneath the photograph, etched into the metal of the locket's interior, was a single, barely legible initial, a looping, elegant Dlovori. Ben felt a jolt go through him. The pieces, though few, were beginning to form a haunting mosaic. A beautiful old locket, a young girl's faded photograph, a single initial, and a dog, abandoned to die. A dog that had clearly once been loved. Evident by her gentle nature despite the trauma. "A girl," Sarah whispered, her voice filled with a quiet awe. "And an L. Do you think—" "I don't know what to think." "Sarah," Ben admitted, running a hand through his hair. "But this isn't just an animal cruelty case anymore, this locket. It feels like it holds a secret." He looked from the locket to Hope, now resting more peacefully, occasionally offering a soft sigh. Her eyes were partially closed, but she seemed to sense their presence. A faint tail wagging almost imperceptibly against the bedding. The contrast between the vibrant young girl in the photo and the fragile, abused dog was stark and heartbreaking. Ben knew he had to report this to his superiors. A potential connection between an abandoned animal and a possible missing person, however tenuous, was too significant to ignore. But he also knew the bureaucracy, the skepticism. He needed to build a case, to find more. "Sarah," Ben said, his voice firm with renewed determination. "I need to photograph this locket, every detail, and I need to start digging." He pulled out his phone, carefully taking high-resolution pictures of the locket, the photograph, and the etched initial. He zoomed in, trying to capture every nuance. "Do you think the girl is still alive?" Sarah asked. Her voice hushed. Ben sighed, the weight of the question heavy on him. "I don't know. This locket looks decades old, if that's the case. And if this dog truly belonged to her, she'd be an adult now. Or the worst. But if someone deliberately left this locket on her, it could be a clue. Or a message." He felt a deep, unsettling feeling that this wasn't just a simple case of someone ditching a pet. The locket suggested a deliberate connection, a past, and perhaps a dark secret. He thought about the reclusive nature of the industrial park, the lack of witnesses, the sheer calculated brutality of tying a dog to a fence in a hurricane. It spoke of a perpetrator who was not only cruel but also cunning, and perhaps hiding something far more heinous than animal abuse. His mind began to race, sifting through the years of local history he knew, the whispers and unsolved mysteries that sometimes lingered in small towns. He thought of old missing persons files, cold cases, anything that might align with a young girl named Lily or Lisa or Laura from years past. "I'm going to start with the oldest missing person reports in the area," Ben stated, his resolve hardening. "And I'm going to talk to some of the old-timers who've lived here their whole lives. Someone might recognize this locket. Or the girl. It's a long shot, but it's all we have." Sarah nodded, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "I'll keep Hope comfortable and safe here. Officer, she's in good hands. Let me know if you find anything." As Ben left the clinic, Rex walking dutifully beside him, The storm had truly passed. The sun, though weak, was attempting to break through the clouds, casting a pale, watery light on the town. But for Ben, the real storm had only just begun. It was a storm of unanswered questions, of a buried past, and of a shocking revelation that he knew, deep in his gut, was waiting to be uncovered. He had rescued a dog, but he had also stumbled upon a thread that led into the heart of a mystery that felt both deeply personal and profoundly unsettling. The search for justice, now intertwined with a dog named Hope and a faded photograph, had just begun back at the precinct. The mundane hum of fluorescent lights and the scent of stale coffee did little to dispel the lingering unease that clung to Ben. He had filed the initial animal cruelty report, noting the severity of Hope's condition and the suspicious circumstances. But the locket, now carefully placed in an evidence bag on his desk, felt like a ticking time bomb, a silent declaration of a much larger crime. He had started his search in the department's digital archives, filtering through missing persons cases spanning the last 30 years. He specifically looked for cases involving young girls, around the age depicted in the locket's faded photograph, and those with an initial L. The sheer volume of cold cases was disheartening, a stark reminder of lives gone missing and families left in perpetual agony. He scrolled through mugshots and grainy school photos, each one a poignant ghost, but none seemed to match the vibrant, smiling face in the locket. Rex, ever vigilant, lay under Ben's desk, occasionally nudging his hand with his wet nose. A silent demand for attention or a simple acknowledgement. Ben reached down and scratched behind Rex's ears, finding a moment of calm in the familiar ritual. "Just trying to make sense of this, boy," he murmured. His eyes fixed on the locket. The locket itself was a marvel of craftsmanship, even tarnished. The intricate filigree work suggested a significant value, certainly not something one would simply discard. It felt weighty in his palm, cool and solid. He turned it over and over, examining every etched line, every delicate curve. It wasn't mass-produced, it was unique, perhaps even custom-made. This detail further solidified Ben's suspicion that it held a deeply personal significance, making its presence on an abandoned dog all the more perplexing and sinister. His phone buzzed. It was Sarah from the clinic. "Officer Carter, just wanted to give you an update on Hope. She's stable, still weak, but she's started to show a bit more personality. She's surprisingly gentle, even with strangers. That's great news." "Sarah?" Ben said. Genuinely pleased. "Any progress on getting her cleaned up fully?" "Yes, Dr. Evans managed to give her a proper bath and trim some of that matted fur. It was quite a job." Sarah chuckled softly. "But it was necessary. And the locket. Now that it's clean, it's even more striking. The metal is incredibly fine, almost like sterling silver. Did you notice anything else about it after the cleaning Ben pressed?" His voice barely concealing his eagerness. "Only that the initial L is much clearer now, and there's a tiny, almost invisible inscription on the back. It's very faint, almost worn away, but it looks like a date. Something like May 12th, 19XX or XX May 12th. It's really hard to read the year, but it definitely looks like it's from an older century. Might need a jeweler's loupe to really decipher it." Ben felt a surge of excitement. A date. This was exactly the kind of concrete detail he needed. "Thank you, Sarah. That's incredibly helpful. Don't let anyone touch it." "Okay, I'll come by later to examine it more closely." He hung up, his mind racing. A specific date meant a specific event. A birthday, an anniversary, a gift if he could pinpoint the year. It would narrow down his search significantly. He shifted his focus to the Historical Society's online archives, looking for Old Town records, census data, even old newspaper articles from around the May 12th date. It was a tedious, painstaking process, but the image of the girl's hopeful smile and Hope's suffering fueled his resolve. Later that afternoon, after his shift, Ben drove back to the clinic. Hope was indeed looking better. Her coat, though still thin, was no longer a matted mess, revealing patches of soft, light brown and white fur. She still bore the scars of her ordeal, the raw skin on her neck, the skeletal frame, but her eyes held a new spark of life, a quiet curiosity. She even offered a tentative tail wag when Ben approached, a shy gesture of burgeoning trust. "She's a sweet girl." "Officer Carter," Sarah said, her voice soft as she gently stroked Hope's head. "Despite everything, she's so gentle." Ben nodded, his gaze fixed on the locket, which now gleamed faintly, freed from its encasement of grime. He borrowed a powerful magnifying glass from Sarah and carefully examined the tiny inscription. It was incredibly faint, worn almost smooth by time and exposure. After several attempts, angling it under the harsh clinic lights, he finally made it out. "To Lily, on her 6th spring, May 12th, 1978. The words hit him like a physical blow. Lily. Not Lisa. Or Laura. But Lily. And a specific date, May 12th. 1978. That meant the girl in the picture would be in her late 40s or early 50s now. If she was still alive, and the locket was a gift for her 6th birthday, this wasn't just an old piece of jewelry, it was a tangible link to a specific person. A specific moment in time. The initial L now definitively stood for Lily, and the fact that this locket was on a dog, abandoned to die, a dog that had clearly lived a long, hard life, suggested a deeply troubling connection. This dog had been with Lily, or at least someone closely associated with her, for a very long time. Lily. Ben breathed, the name rolling off his tongue. "Sarah, this is it. This is a massive lead." He explained the inscription, the specific date, the undeniable link to the name Lily. Sarah's eyes widened, a hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my goodness, so the dog. She must have been Lily's dog, or from her family." "Exactly," Ben confirmed, his mind already formulating the next steps. "Now we have a name, and a precise year. I need to go back to the archives. Focus on missing persons reports, family histories, anything from 1978 onwards. Looking for a Lily who would have been 6 years old that year, especially if there's any mention of a family dog, or unusual circumstances." He felt a renewed sense of urgency. The locket wasn't just a clue, it was a silent scream from the past. It wasn't just about finding the person who had abandoned Hope. It was about uncovering whatever happened to Lily. Decades ago, the kindness of rescuing a dog had unexpectedly pulled him into a cold case. A mystery shrouded in time. He knew this investigation would be deeply personal for him, driven by the innocent face in the locket and the enduring loyalty of a dog named Hope. The storm had passed, but its ripples were only just beginning to reveal hidden truths, armed with a newly deciphered inscription. Ben felt a renewed surge of purpose. Lily, on her 6th spring, May 12th, 1978. This wasn't just a clue, it was a timestamp. A name. A pivotal moment frozen in time. The locket was more than an object, it was a voice from the past, whispering a forgotten story. His first stop back at the station was the cold case files. He input the parameters missing persons. Female. Born approximately 1972 to be 6 in 1978. And most crucially, name Lily or variations. He braced himself. Knowing the sheer volume of such cases could be overwhelming, the database churned for a moment, then presented a handful of matches. One name immediately caught his eye, Lily Mae Thorne. Reported missing on July 1st, 1978 from Seabrook. Her birth date was listed as May 12th, 1972. The description matched the approximate age in the Lockett's photo. A chill ran down Ben's spine. This was almost too perfect. He clicked on the file. The original report was thin, detailing a distraught aunt reporting her niece. Lily? Missing. The aunt had stated Lily wandered off while playing in a nearby field. Search parties had been organized, but no trace of the girl was ever found. The case eventually went cold, classified as a probable runaway or, more grimly, a victim of abduction with no leads. There was no mention of a dog in the report. Ben printed out the file, his eyes scanning every line, every sparse detail. The address listed for Lily Mae Thorne was an old farmhouse on the outskirts of Seabrook, not far from the abandoned industrial park where Hope had been found. The geographical proximity was unsettling. He grabbed his jacket. He needed to visit that location, to see the old farmhouse, to walk the ground where Lily Mae Thorne had last been seen. And he needed to talk to anyone still living in the area, especially the elderly residents who might remember the Thorne family. Or the girl who vanished. Local lore. Forgotten whispers. Sometimes they held more truth than official reports. Rex, sensing the shift in Ben's mood, rose from his spot under the desk, his tail giving a tentative wag. "Come on, boy," Ben said, patting his side. "We've got a real mystery on our hands now." The drive to the old Thorne property was a short but somber one. The farmhouse stood dilapidated and crumbling, swallowed by overgrown weeds and tangled vines. Broken windows stared out like empty eyes, and the porch sagged precariously. It was a picture of abandonment, a silent monument to a forgotten tragedy. Ben got out of the K9 unit, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. The silence was profound, broken only by the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze, a stark contrast to the storm's fury that had brought him here. Rex padded silently beside him, his nose to the ground, sniffing, interpreting the myriad scents of the decaying property. As Ben walked around the perimeter of the house, he tried to imagine a little girl, 6 years old, playing here, laughter, sunshine, perhaps a dog by her side. The juxtaposition with the current desolation was heartbreaking. He noted the proximity to the industrial park, easily within walking distance for a curious child or a determined dog. He found the field where Lily was reported to have gone missing. Now it was a wild expanse, but in 1978 it would have been an open space, perhaps used for farming or as a pasture. He tried to visualize the search parties, the desperation of the family, the eventual fading of hope. His attention was drawn to an even older, smaller cottage nestled deeper in the woods beyond the farm, barely visible through the thick canopy. It looked even more ancient than the farmhouse. Curiosity piqued. Ben decided to investigate. The path leading to it was barely discernible, overgrown and disused. As they approached, a thin wisp of smoke curled from its rickety chimney. Someone was living there. This was a stroke of luck. An old-timer, perhaps, who had lived through the disappearance. He knocked on the weathered door. After a long moment, it creaked open a crack, revealing a pair of rheumy, suspicious eyes, a frail, elderly woman, her face a roadmap of wrinkles, peered out. Her silver hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she clutched a worn shawl around her shoulders. "Mrs. Gable?" Ben asked, recognizing the name from a quick background check he'd done on the property's historical residents. Who's asking? Her voice was raspy, laced with caution. Officer Ben Carter. Seabrook PD. I apologize for disturbing you. Ma'am, I'm investigating a cold case. A missing persons case from a long time ago. Lily Mae Thorne. I understand you might have known the family. At the mention of Lily's name, Mrs. Gable's eyes widened slightly. A flicker of something, recognition pain, crossed her face. She hesitated, then slowly opened the door wider, beckoning him in. "Come in." Officer. It's not often Lily's name is spoken anymore. The cottage was small, cozy, and filled with the scent of old books and brewing tea. Dust motes danced in the slivers of sunlight that pierced the curtains. Rex, after a quick, polite sniff of the threshold, lay down quietly by Ben's feet. Sensing the solemnity of the moment, Mrs. Gable offered him a cup of tea. Her hands trembling slightly, Ben accepted gratefully. He then, very carefully, pulled out his phone and showed her the photograph of the locket he had taken. I found this. Mrs. Gable, on an abandoned dog. This belonged to Lily May Thorne, didn't it? Mrs. Gable gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Her eyes welled up, and she reached out a frail, trembling finger to touch the image on the screen. The locket. Lily's locket. Oh, sweet Lily. She never went anywhere without it. Her grandmother gave it to her. A family heirloom. Tears streamed down her wrinkled cheeks. Yes, officer. That was Lily's. No doubt. Ben's heart pounded. He was on the right track. Mrs. Gable, can you tell me anything about Lily, about her life? Her family? She nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Lily was such a bright, sweet child, full of life, loved to explore. After her parents, after they passed, she came to live with her uncle, Arthur Finch. He owned the Thorne farmhouse. He was a reclusive man, officer, a strange man. Very strict with Lily. Kept her close. Didn't like her roaming. Ben scribbled notes, the name Arthur Finch echoing ominously in his mind. Did he have a dog? Mrs. Gable shook her head emphatically. No, Arthur detested animals. Absolutely hated them. Said they were dirty. A nuisance. It was one of the few points of contention between him and Lily. She loved animals. You see, there was a stray dog she befriended, a scruffy little thing that used to hang around the farmhouse. Lily would sneak him food, play with him in the fields. Arthur would chase the poor creature away with a stick. Shouting. Lily would cry. Ben felt a sudden, profound connection. A scruffy little dog. A dog that Lily loved. Could it be Hope the time frame fit? The description fit the general size. And the locket. Lily's cherished locket. Was on Hope. The pieces were beginning to fall into place, forming a horrifying picture. What happened when Lily disappeared? Mrs. Gable Ben asked, his voice low. Arthur said she ran off. Said she was always a wild one. Prone to wandering? He seemed oddly calm about it. Even though Lily was his only family left, he didn't seem distraught, just resigned. I always found it strange. The whole town did. A 6-year-old just vanishes like that. And Arthur, so quick to dismiss it. She shivered. Despite the warmth of the cottage, people talked, whispered, but no one had proof. And then he sold the farmhouse a few years later and moved away, claiming the memories were too painful. Too painful, he said, but I always had my doubts about Arthur Finch. Ben felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. Arthur Finch disliked animals, oddly calm about Lily's disappearance, sold the property and moved away quickly. And a dog, Lily's dog, abandoned decades later, chained in a storm, just a stone's throw from the old farmhouse. The pieces weren't just falling into place, they were locking together, forming a chilling narrative of betrayal and a crime far deeper than a simple missing persons case. The locket wasn't just a memento, it was Lily's final, silent message, carried through decades by her loyal companion. The name Arthur Finch hung in the air, heavy with unspoken accusations. Ben felt a cold dread settle deep in his gut. Mrs. Gable's trembling hands, her hushed tones, the way she spoke of a quiet, watchful fear surrounding Finch. It all painted a picture far more sinister than a simple case of a child wandering off. He had come here seeking information about Lily, but he was uncovering a much darker, long-buried secret. Arthur Finch, Ben repeated, the name tasting like ash on his tongue. Do you know where he went after he sold the farmhouse? Mrs. Gable. She shook her head, a faraway look in her eyes. No, officer, he just left, vanished. Almost said he was moving somewhere far away, where the memories wouldn't haunt him. Some folks said he went down south, perhaps Florida, but no one ever heard from him again. It was a relief, to be honest. A quiet sigh of relief went through the town when he left. Ben pressed on. Did Lily have any other family besides her parents and Arthur grandparents? Aunts, uncles? Only an aunt, on her mother's side. Mrs. Gable replied, her gaze distant. Lily's mother was an only child. Her father had a large family, but they lived far away, out west somewhere, after her parents died in that car accident. Arthur, as her mother's only brother, took her in. Her aunt, Martha, lived in the city, and she visited sometimes. But Arthur seemed to discourage it. He was very possessive of Lily, in a strange way. Martha tried to visit more often, I think, but Arthur made it clear she wasn't welcome. This detail added another layer to Ben's suspicions. A possessive uncle, isolating the child from other family members. And then her sudden disappearance. It was a classic red flag in abduction cases. The locket, the dog, the convenient story of wandering off. It was all beginning to coalesce into a chilling narrative of a carefully orchestrated deception. Mrs. Gable, the dog Lily befriended, Ben asked, keeping his voice even. Can you describe her markings, her size? Oh, she was a scruffy thing. Mrs. Gable chuckled, a rare, fleeting moment of lightness in her somber recollections. A medium-sized dog, mostly light brown with some white patches, especially on her chest and paws, a bit shaggy, very friendly. Even after Arthur kicked her, Lily called her, I think she called her Shadow sometimes because she followed Lily everywhere. It broke Lily's heart whenever Arthur chased her away. Ben felt a surge of confirmation. The description, the temperament, it matched Hope perfectly. The dog found tied to the fence was Lily's childhood companion. This wasn't just a dog that happened to have Lily's locket. This was Lily's dog, carrying a piece of her memory for decades, finally being found in the very place where Lily vanished. The irony was almost too cruel to bear. Thank you, Mrs. Gable, Ben said, rising to leave. You've been incredibly helpful. I appreciate your honesty. Officer, she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper as he reached the door. Promise me you'll find out what really happened to Lily. That child, she deserves so much more. Her eyes, full of a deep, abiding sorrow, pleaded with him. I will, Mrs. Gable, Ben vowed, his hand on the doorknob. I promise. Back in the K-9 unit. Ben felt the full weight of the revelations. He had Lily's name, her birth date, a family history, a suspect, Arthur Finch, and a living, breathing witness Hope, Lily's loyal dog, who had carried the locket. And perhaps the truth, for over 40 years? The thought was staggering. A dog. The silent keeper of a chilling secret. He immediately called the station, requesting a nationwide search for Arthur Finch, using any available historical data, the farmhouse sale, utility records, anything that could provide a lead. He also cross-referenced Finch's name with any criminal records, however minor. That might indicate a propensity for violence or dishonesty. The next few days were a blur of intense investigation. The department, initially skeptical of Ben's dog-led cold case, quickly changed their tune once he presented the irrefutable evidence, the locket, the inscription, Mrs. Gable's testimony, and the uncanny match between Hope and the description of Lily's dog. The chief, a gruff but fair man, gave Ben full authorization to pursue the lead wherever it took him. Arthur Finch was proving elusive. His movements after selling the farmhouse were sparse, almost deliberately untraceable. He had seemingly vanished into thin air. It was as if he wanted to erase his past, to become a ghost. This further fueled Ben's suspicion. Only someone with something truly terrible to hide would go to such lengths. Ben spent hours poring over old property deeds, tax records, and utility bills connected to the Thorne farmhouse. He contacted other police departments in the South. Following faint digital trails, every dead end only solidified his conviction that Finch was hiding something enormous. Meanwhile, Hope was slowly but surely recovering at the clinic. Ben visited her every day, bringing Rex along. The bond between the two dogs was growing stronger. Rex, usually a boisterous police canine, was remarkably gentle with Hope, often nudging her with his nose, offering quiet comfort. Hope, in turn, began to respond more, her tail wagging with increasing enthusiasm whenever Ben or Rex entered the room. Her eyes, once filled with despair, now held a faint glimmer of hope. Living up to her new name, during one of his visits, Ben noticed something else, something subtle but significant. Whenever he showed Hope the locket, held carefully in the evidence bag, her ears would twitch. She would sniff at the bag, a low, soft whine escaping her. It wasn't distress. It was a deep, mournful recognition. It was as if she remembered Lily, remembered the locket, remembered a time of joy before the darkness descended. Her emotional response, though wordless, was a powerful confirmation of her connection to the missing girl. The breakthrough finally came from a dusty property record in a small, obscure county in rural Florida. Arthur Finch had purchased a small, isolated cabin under a different name, a common trick for those trying to disappear. The details were sparse, but the signature on the deed matched older records. Ben felt a jolt of triumph. He had his man. The chief immediately authorized a warrant for Finch's arrest, not just for animal cruelty, but for suspicion of involvement in the disappearance of Lily Mae Thorne. The evidence, though circumstantial, was strong enough to warrant bringing him in for questioning. Ben felt a grim satisfaction. After decades, Lily's story was finally coming to light. The storm had brought him to hope, and hope had led him to the undeniable truth. Echoing a silent plea for justice that had resonated across time, the lead to Arthur Finch's hidden cabin in rural Florida ignited a firestorm of activity within the Seabrook Police Department. For decades, Lily Mae Thorne's disappearance had been a ghost in their cold case files, a testament to unsolved sorrow. Now, spurred by the unlikely discovery of a locket on an abandoned dog, a quiet, almost forgotten investigation was about to burst wide open. Ben, alongside two seasoned detectives, flew to Florida on the next available flight. Rex, due to departmental regulations, had to stay behind. But his absence weighed heavily on Ben. He missed the comforting weight of his partner beside him, the silent communication that often spoke louder than words. However, the mission's gravity overshadowed any personal discomfort. This wasn't just about an arrest, it was about finally bringing truth and, perhaps, closure to a decades-old mystery. The Florida cabin was everything Ben had expected: isolated, dilapidated, and deeply unsettling. It stood shrouded by thick, oppressive foliage. Miles from the nearest paved road, the air was heavy with humidity and the scent of decay. It was the perfect hideaway for someone who wanted to disappear. As they approached, Ben noticed a scruffy, unkempt yard filled with overgrown weeds and rusted junk. A battered pickup truck was parked askew near a rickety porch. There was no sign of life, no movement, just an eerie stillness that spoke volumes. The detective secured the perimeter while Ben, warrant in hand, approached the front door. He knocked firmly, announcing their presence. Silence. He knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. The air crackled with tension. Police Arthur Finch opened the door. Ben's voice cut through the stillness. A long moment passed. Then, a shuffling sound from inside, followed by a faint clatter. The door slowly, grudgingly, opened an inch. A pair of wary, bloodshot eyes peered out. Arthur Finch had aged considerably, his once gaunt face now heavily lined, his thinning hair a wild, disheveled mess. He looked like a man who had been running for a very long time, and the weight of his past had finally caught up. "What do you want?" Finch's voice was a gravelly whisper, laced with suspicion and a hint of fear. "Arthur Finch, you're under arrest for suspicion of involvement in the disappearance of Lily Mae Thorne. And for extreme animal cruelty," Ben stated, his voice firm, holding up his badge and the warrant. Finch's eyes widened, his face paling to an ashen gray. The mention of Lily's name seemed to suck all the air from his lungs. He instinctively tried to slam the door shut, but Ben was faster. Wedging his foot in the opening, the two detectives moved in, quickly securing Finch, who offered little resistance. His body suddenly limp, as if the fight had drained out of him, inside the cabin. The air was stale and heavy, filled with the scent of dust and unwashed clothes. It was sparsely furnished, grim, and unwelcoming. Finch was led out, handcuffed, and placed in a waiting police cruiser. Ben remained inside with the other detectives, beginning the arduous process of searching the premises. The search was meticulous, focusing on any evidence that could link Finch to Lily's disappearance. They found old financial ledgers, hidden away in a dusty cabinet. These ledgers, meticulously kept despite Finch's outward appearance of disarray, contained chilling revelations. There were regular substantial payments to various offshore accounts, often coded with cryptic references. One entry, dated just after Lily's disappearance, was particularly damning. Sale, payment received. Ben felt a cold dread spread through him as he looked at the entry. Sale. It could only mean one thing. Lily's sale. The sheer audacity, the callousness of it, was sickening. He called the chief back in Seabrook, his voice tight with suppressed rage. "Chief, we found him, and we found ledgers. It looks like Lily wasn't just abducted." "Sir, she was sold." A silence stretched on the line, heavy with unspoken horror. "God help us, Carter," the chief finally said, his voice grim. "Get him back here, immediately. We'll get a full interrogation team ready." Back in Seabrook, Arthur Finch was brought into the interrogation room. He sat across from Ben and Detective Reynolds, his eyes darting nervously around the sterile room. He remained stoic at first, denying everything, claiming Lily had run away, fabricating a tale of a rebellious child. "She was a difficult child," Finch rasped, his voice regaining some of its earlier strength. A flicker of his old, controlling self emerging. "Always wandering off, I told her not to. That dog of hers, that stray, always encouraging her to run wild. She probably just ran away with it. Couldn't control her." Ben placed the locket, now gleaming faintly, on the table between them. "This belonged to Lily, didn't it?" Mr. Finch to Lily on her 6th of spring, May 12th, 1978. Her cherished locket, from her grandmother, found it around the neck of a dog, the very same dog you hated, the one Lily called Shadow. Finch's composure cracked, his eyes fixed on the locket, a tremor running through his hands. His face contorted, a mixture of fear and a deep, simmering resentment. That damn dog, always around, always a nuisance. The dog was found tied to a fence post in the industrial park. "Mr. Finch," Detective Reynolds interjected, his voice calm but firm. "In the middle of Hurricane Esmeralda, left to drown. The same industrial park, just a short walk from your old farmhouse. You tried to get rid of the last living connection to Lily, didn't you?" Finch flinched, his eyes darting away from the locket. "The dog was old sick. It was a mercy, he stammered, a desperate lie. Mercy? Ben scoffed, leaning forward, his voice low and dangerous. You chained an emaciated, terrified animal to a post in a hurricane. That wasn't mercy. Finch, that was pure, unadulterated cruelty, just like what you did to Lily. He then slid the financial ledger across the table. Open to the L sale entry. And what about this? Mr. Finch, L sale, payment received. What was L sale? Arthur, what did you sell? Finch looked at the ledger, his face draining of color. The carefully constructed facade crumbled. He stared at the damning evidence, his shoulders slumping. The game was up. The truth, after decades, was finally out. His voice, when it came, was barely a whisper, a broken confession of a depraved mind. Her parents, they left her a substantial inheritance, he mumbled, not meeting their eyes. A trust fund. I couldn't get to it easily, not with Lily alive. And that dog, it was always around, always a reminder of her. I hated it. He finally looked up, his eyes now filled with a disturbing mix of resentment and self-pity. I knew people who could make children disappear. For a price. A big price. They said she would be given a new life. A new family. I told them she'd run away. Fabricated the whole story. Moved away to avoid suspicion. I needed the money. And that dog. I thought I'd finally gotten rid of it. Years later, I saw it sniffing around the old place again. It recognized me. I couldn't have it leading anyone back. The storm, it was the perfect cover. Ben felt a cold wave of revulsion. The monster wasn't some shadowy figure, he was the uncle, the supposed guardian, who had betrayed his own flesh and blood for greed. He had sold Lily into an unimaginable fate, then tried to silence the only witness, a loyal, innocent dog. The depths of his depravity were sickening. The confession was recorded, meticulous in its horrifying detail. Arthur Finch had orchestrated Lily's disappearance, selling her to a child trafficking ring, fabricating her running away, and then living a quiet, reclusive life on her inheritance. And when the ghost of his past, in the form of an old, loyal dog, reappeared, he tried to eliminate it in the most brutal way imaginable. Justice for Lily, after all these years, finally felt within reach. And it had all started with a K-9 officer, a loyal dog, and a powerful storm. The confession, extracted from Arthur Finch in the sterile confines of the interrogation room, reverberated through the Seabrook Police Department like a seismic shockwave. For decades, Lily Mae Thorne had been a name whispered with sorrow, a cold case gathering dust. Now, a horrifying truth, far darker than anyone had imagined, had finally come to light, brought forth by the tenacity of an officer and the silent testament of a loyal dog. Ben sat in his office, the recorded confession playing softly on a loop, his mind struggling to process the sheer depravity of Finch's actions. To sell a child, his own niece, for financial gain, then to meticulously cover it up for over 40 years. And finally, to attempt to silence the last living link to his monstrous crime in the most brutal way possible. It was a level of cold calculation that chilled Ben to the bone. The news broke like a dam. The initial local reports focused on the miraculous rescue of Hope, the dog, and the subsequent arrest for animal cruelty. But as the full scope of Finch's confession emerged, the child trafficking, the fabricated disappearance, the decades-long cover-up, the story exploded. Local news channels ran continuous segments, followed quickly by national outlets picking up the sensational, heartbreaking tale. K-9 officer storm. Rescue uncovers decades-old child trafficking ring. Blared one headline, another, more poignant, read, Abandoned dog carried secret of missing girl for 46 years. The public reaction was immediate and visceral. Outrage, grief, and a profound sense of horror swept through the community and across the nation. Social media erupted with condemnations of Arthur Finch, calls for justice for Lily, and an outpouring of sympathy and admiration for Hope and Officer Ben Carter. Pet owners hugged their animals tighter. Parents looked at their children with renewed vigilance. The image of Hope, initially a starved, terrified creature found chained in a hurricane, transformed into a powerful symbol. She was no longer just a rescued dog, she was a survivor, a silent witness, and the catalyst for uncovering a terrible injustice. Donations flooded into the Seabrook Animal Emergency Clinic, designated for Hope's recovery and for the care of other abandoned animals. Banners and signs began to appear around Seabrook, bearing Hope's name and messages of solidarity. Meanwhile, Ben found himself thrust into the unexpected spotlight. Interviews were requested, press conferences organized. He handled them with his usual quiet professionalism, always deflecting praise to Rex and to the diligent work of the entire department. But he couldn't deny the profound impact Hope had made, not just on the case, but on him personally. She was a living embodiment of resilience, a testament to enduring loyalty that transcended time and unimaginable suffering. The police investigation widened, based on Finch's confession and the financial ledgers. A task force was immediately established to track down the child trafficking ring he had mentioned. The entries, though cryptic, provided enough information to launch a full-scale federal investigation. It was a difficult, painstaking process, delving into a dark, hidden world, but the determination was palpable. If Lily had been sold, there were likely other victims, other families left in agonizing ignorance. At the clinic, Hope continued her slow but steady recovery. Sarah and Dr. Evans were amazed by her progress. Once withdrawn and fearful, she was now beginning to bloom. Her fur, having been thoroughly cleaned and trimmed, revealed her true colors, a beautiful mix of golden retriever and shepherd. With gentle, intelligent eyes, her movements were stronger, her appetite healthier. She still bore the physical scars of her past, but her spirit, though bruised, was remarkably intact. Ben visited her daily, sometimes bringing Rex, sometimes just sitting quietly by her kennel, talking to her in low tones. She would lean into his touch, her tail offering a soft, rhythmic thump against the floor. She had truly bonded with him. A quiet gratitude in her gaze. It was a profound connection, forged in the crucible of a raging storm and a shared discovery. One afternoon, while Ben was with Hope, a reporter from a national news network arrived at the clinic, not for an interview, but with an urgent message. "Officer Carter, we just received a call from someone claiming to be Lily Mae Thorne. She saw the news reports, the images of the locket and the dog. She said it all matches what she remembers from her childhood." Ben's heart leaped into his throat. After all these decades? Is she safe? Where is she? The reporter, a seasoned veteran named Evelyn Reed, looked genuinely moved. "She's safe. She's in California, living under an assumed identity. She escaped her captors years ago and built a new life, too afraid to come forward or even look back. But when she saw Hope in the locket, she knew. She said it was too much to ignore." Evelyn showed Ben a faded, blurry photo on her phone, sent by the woman. It was an older woman, perhaps in her late 40s or early 50s, with a gentle smile and eyes that held a hint of the childhood innocence seen in the locket. But what truly struck Ben was the scar, a faint but distinct line above her right eyebrow, consistent with a childhood injury he'd read about in Lily's original missing persons report. Tears welled in Ben's eyes. Lily. She was alive. A survivor. He couldn't speak, simply nodding, overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the moment. Hope, as if sensing the emotional shift in the room, nudged Ben's hand with her nose, then let out a soft whine, her gaze fixed on the phone screen. The ripple effect of Finch's confession was immense. Not only was Lily Mae Thorne, now an adult woman named Eliza, found alive, but the investigation into the trafficking ring began to yield results. Arrests were made, a network dismantled. The hope was that other victims, like Lily, might also be found and given a chance to reclaim their lives. The story of hope, the locket, and Lily Mae Thorne became more than just a crime story. It became a saga of resilience, the enduring power of truth, and the unexpected ways justice can find its path. Even after decades of silence, the fury of the hurricane had brought destruction, but it had also, miraculously, swept away the dust from a buried past, revealing a truth that would finally set a family and a nation on the path to healing. The news of Lily Mae Thorne, now known as Eliza, being alive and safe sent a powerful ripple through every corner of the Seabrook Police Department, and indeed, through the entire town. It was the kind of news that transcended the mundane, a glimmer of light breaking through decades of shadow. Ben felt an overwhelming mix of relief and a profound sense of vindication. All those quiet suspicions, the relentless digging, the instinct that had guided him, it had all led to this moment. The immediate priority was to facilitate Lily's safe return and to manage the media frenzy that had already begun to spiral. Evelyn Reed, the national reporter who had first connected with Eliza, became an invaluable conduit, ensuring Eliza's privacy and wishes were respected while carefully coordinating her reunion with the only surviving link to her past hope. Her childhood dog, Eliza's journey from California was shrouded in secrecy, managed by a specialized victim support unit. Ben, however, was privy to some of the details, each one painting a picture of an incredible, resilient woman. Eliza had indeed been trafficked, sold into a dark network that preyed on vulnerable children. She had endured unimaginable hardships, but through sheer force of will, she had escaped in her late teens, determined to reclaim her life. She had built a new identity, a new existence, always looking over her shoulder, always afraid her past would catch up to her. The news of Arthur Finch's arrest, coupled with the image of her grandmother's locket on the now famous dog, had finally given her the courage to step out of the shadows. The day of the reunion was orchestrated with utmost care. The Seabrook Animal Emergency Clinic, where hope continued to thrive, was chosen as the location. It was a place of healing, a fitting backdrop for such a poignant moment. Only a handful of key personnel were present. Ben, the chief, Sarah, Dr. Evans, and a small, trusted film crew from Evelyn Reed's network, who had promised to handle the sensitive reunion with dignity and respect. Hope, now significantly recovered and looking much healthier, was brought into a quiet room. Her fur was clean, her eyes bright. She still carried a slight tremor, a lingering ghost of her trauma, but her tail gave a soft, anticipatory wag when Ben entered with Rex, who seemed to sense the importance of the moment. Then, Eliza walked in. She was a woman in her late 40s, with a graceful bearing and eyes that, despite the weariness, held a striking resemblance to the laughing child in the locket. She took a deep, shaky breath, her gaze immediately falling upon Hope. Lily Ben whispered gently, his voice thick with emotion. Eliza nodded, tears already streaming down her face. She sank to her knees, extending a trembling hand. Shadow, my shadow. Hope's head cocked. Her ears twitched. She had heard the name. A name from so long ago. A name that had been spoken by a beloved voice. She let out a soft whine, a sound of tentative recognition, then slowly, hesitantly, began to move towards Eliza. Eliza reached out, stroking Hope's head. Oh, my sweet girl. You remember me, don't you? And then it happened. Hope, who had been wary of most strangers, who had only fully opened up to Ben and Rex, leaned into Eliza's touch. Her tail began to wag, not just a tentative thump, but a full, joyful sweep. She sniffed Eliza's hand, then nudged her face into Eliza's neck, whimpering softly, deeply. It was a profound, undeniable recognition, a bond that had defied decades, trauma, and the cruel hand of fate. The locket, still around Hope's neck, seemed to gleam in the soft light, a silent witness to the miracle unfolding. Eliza buried her face in Hope's fur, sobbing openly, tears of grief and overwhelming relief. "My shadow," she choked out, her voice raw with emotion. "You're here. You're alive. I never stopped thinking about you." Ben, watching from a respectful distance, felt a lump form in his throat. Rex, sensing the profound emotional release, nudged Ben's hand, then lay down quietly, watching the reunion with a serene expression. It was a moment that transcended words, a testament to the extraordinary bond between a girl and her dog, a bond that had endured through separation and suffering. The raw emotion of the reunion was broadcast across the nation. It captivated millions, turning Hope and Lily's story into a global phenomenon. The public's initial outrage over Arthur Finch's actions intensified, fueling a demand for justice not only for Lily but for all child trafficking victims. The authorities, emboldened by the public support and the new information provided by Eliza, intensified their efforts to dismantle the trafficking network. Eliza, despite her own trauma, courageously offered to cooperate fully, providing invaluable details about the individuals involved and the methods they used. Her testimony became a powerful weapon in the fight against human exploitation. Arthur Finch, facing overwhelming evidence and the undeniable fact of Lily's survival, attempted to recant his confession, claiming coercion. But the recorded confession, combined with the financial ledgers, Lily's own harrowing testimony, and the powerful symbolism of the locket and Hope, proved too much. His elaborate web of lies, carefully spun over decades, was completely unraveled. The legal process began swiftly. Arthur Finch was formally charged with kidnapping, child trafficking, attempted murder for his actions against Hope, and numerous financial fraud offenses related to Lily's inheritance. The prosecution vowed to seek the harshest possible penalties. The story wasn't just about crime and justice. It was about the power of resilience, the enduring nature of loyalty, and the unexpected ways truth can emerge from the darkest corners. Hope, once a symbol of neglect, became a national icon of survival and a beacon for justice. Her unlikely role in uncovering a decades-old crime cemented her place in the hearts of millions, proving that even the most vulnerable among us can hold the key to unlocking the most profound truths. The storm had indeed shocked everyone, but its greatest shock was the profound hope it had delivered. The media whirlwind surrounding Lily Mae Thorne's miraculous reappearance, combined with the heinous nature of Arthur Finch's crimes, transformed the small town of Seabrook into an unlikely epicenter of national attention. News crews swarmed, reporters vied for exclusive interviews, and the story of Hope, the locket, and Lily became a powerful, compelling narrative of human resilience and unexpected justice. Eliza, now publicly identified as Lily Mae Thorne, handled the intense scrutiny with a quiet strength that belied her harrowing past. She was a testament to the human spirit's capacity to endure and rebuild. Under the careful guidance of victim advocates and Ben, who had become a trusted confidant, she began to share fragments of her story, not for sensationalism, but for the profound purpose of raising awareness and seeking justice for others. Her testimony became a central pillar in the prosecution of Arthur Finch. In court, Finch, now a shriveled, broken man, sat with his head bowed as Eliza, calm and composed, recounted the day her life irrevocably changed. She described being lured away by a man her uncle introduced as a friend, who promised her a trip to an amusement park. She remembered being taken far away, the confusing blur of different faces, the fear, and the gradual realization that her world had been ripped apart the moment she spoke of her dog. Shadow. And how her uncle had always disliked her. A palpable gasp went through the courtroom. She described how she had hidden the locket, a precious gift from her beloved grandmother, on Shadow, hoping somehow it would keep them connected. A desperate act of a terrified 6-year-old. She hadn't seen the dog since, believing it lost or gone. A casualty of her abduction. Her tears, when they came, were not for herself, but for the loyal companion she thought she had abandoned. The prosecution presented the locket as Exhibit A, a tangible link across decades. The faded photograph, the inscription, and, most powerfully, the live testimony from Officer Ben Carter about finding the locket on Hope, chained and dying in the storm. It was an emotionally charged moment that left few dry eyes in the courtroom. Arthur Finch's defense, flimsy at best, collapsed under the weight of the evidence. His attempts to portray Lily as a runaway or himself as a victim of circumstance were shattered by the meticulous records, the detailed confession, and now, the living testimony of his victim. The public outcry for justice was immense, amplified by the unprecedented media coverage. Calls for harsher penalties for child trafficking and animal cruelty echoed from every corner of the country. Meanwhile, Hope's transformation was nothing short of miraculous. With Lily by her side, her recovery accelerated. The bond between them was undeniable, a silent language of shared history and enduring love. Hope, once skeletal and withdrawn, was now a vibrant, affectionate dog, constantly seeking Lily's gentle touch. She had found her purpose, her true home. After decades of being lost, Lily, in turn, found a profound sense of healing in Hope's presence. The dog was a living connection to her innocent childhood, a silent reminder that not all was lost, and that love and loyalty could indeed transcend the darkest of experiences. Hope became her shadow once more, providing comfort and strength as Lily navigated the daunting process of reclaiming her identity and facing her past. The community of Seabrook rallied around Lily. A support fund was established to help her with therapy and to rebuild her life. People volunteered their time, offered professional services, and sent countless letters of encouragement. It was a powerful testament to the compassion of ordinary people. Horrified by the injustice and inspired by Lily's courage, the legal proceedings for Arthur Finch moved swiftly. The jury, after a relatively short deliberation, returned a guilty verdict on all counts: kidnapping, child trafficking, attempted murder of an animal, and multiple counts of fraud. The judge, visibly moved by the testimony and the horrific nature of the crimes, sentenced Arthur Finch to the maximum allowable prison term life without parole for the child trafficking and kidnapping charges, along with significant additional sentences for the animal cruelty and fraud. Justice, delayed for over 4 decades, was finally served. The courtroom erupted in a wave of gasps, followed by a quiet, collective sigh of relief. For Lily, it was a moment of profound closure, a final severing of the ties to the man who had stolen her childhood. The ripple effect of the case extended far beyond Seabrook. The national attention it garnered sparked a renewed focus on cold cases, particularly those involving missing children. It highlighted the often overlooked connection between animal abuse and other, more severe crimes, prompting law enforcement agencies across the country to reevaluate their approaches to such cases. Hope's story became a symbol, not just of her own survival, but of the potential for animals to serve as silent witnesses. leading to truth that human investigations might otherwise miss. Ben, standing by Lily's side as the verdict was read, felt a deep sense of peace. His initial act of compassion for a suffering animal had led him down a path he never could have anticipated, uncovering a truth that had been buried for generations. He looked at Hope, who sat calmly beside Lily, her gaze fixed on the woman she had waited so long to find. The loyal dog had fulfilled her silent promise, guarding the locket and the truth until the storm finally broke the silence. The end of the trial marked a new beginning for Lily. She was no longer just a victim, she was a survivor, a voice for the voiceless. And by her side, always, was Hope, the dog who had journeyed through darkness to bring her home, with Arthur Finch safely behind bars. The initial wave of public attention began to shift, evolving from outrage to inspiration. Lily Mae Thorne's story, now fully unraveled, resonated deeply with people across the globe. She wasn't just a victim, she was a beacon of hope, a living testament to survival against unimaginable odds, and a powerful voice for the voiceless. Lily, with the unwavering support of Ben, Sarah, and a dedicated team of victim advocates, embarked on a new, unexpected chapter of her life advocacy. She chose to share her harrowing journey, not as a lament, but as a catalyst for change. Her initial public appearances were difficult, emotionally draining, but each time, she found strength in the overwhelming outpouring of support and, crucially, in the steadfast presence of Hope by her side. Their story became inseparable. Lily and Hope, the girl and the dog, united by a stolen past and a miraculous reunion. Hope, now fully recovered and radiating health, seemed to intuitively understand her role. She would lie calmly beside Lily during interviews, her gentle eyes fixed on her human, offering silent comfort. Her presence was a powerful symbol of loyalty, resilience, and the unexpected ways truth can emerge. Lily's primary focus became raising awareness about child trafficking and the often overlooked connection to animal abuse. She spoke passionately about how animals can be silent witnesses, their neglect or harm often signaling deeper, hidden crimes. Her words carried weight, compelling lawmakers and law enforcement agencies to reevaluate their protocols and to look for these often missed red flags. Inspired by Hope's pivotal role, Lily worked closely with Ben and Sarah to establish a nonprofit organization. They named it Hope's Haven. Its mission was twofold: to provide a safe sanctuary and rehabilitation for abused and neglected animals, giving them a second chance at life, and to fund initiatives that trained first responders, including K-9 officers, to recognize the subtle signs of animal abuse that could indicate human trafficking, domestic violence, or other serious crimes. The community of Seabrook embraced Hope's Haven with open arms. Local businesses donated resources, volunteers poured in, and public donations swelled. The old abandoned industrial warehouse district, where Hope had been found, was eventually purchased and transformed into the main facility for Hope's Haven. It was a poignant full circle, turning a place of despair into a beacon of compassion and healing. Hope herself became the organization's unofficial mascot, a living embodiment of its mission. Her gentle temperament and remarkable story made her an ideal therapy dog. She visited schools, hospitals, and community centers, bringing comfort to children who had experienced trauma, and offering silent companionship to other rescued animals struggling to heal. She had an uncanny ability to connect with those who had suffered, her presence a calming, reassuring balm. Ben, while continuing his duties as a K-9 officer with Rex, dedicated much of his off-duty time to Hope's Haven. He served on its board, lending his expertise in law enforcement and his deep understanding of the human-animal bond. He often brought Rex to the Haven, where the two K-9s would interact with the rescued animals. helping them to socialize and regain trust. Rex, ever the professional, seemed to understand his role as a mentor to the troubled animals, guiding them with a gentle paw and a reassuring presence. The impact of Hope's Haven was immediate and far-reaching. Within its first year, dozens of animals were rescued, rehabilitated, and found loving forever homes. Crucially, the training programs it initiated led to several significant breakthroughs in other cold cases. A vigilant officer, noticing unusual patterns of animal neglect, followed the lead, uncovering a hidden drug operation. Another, alerted by a dog's severe malnutrition, found evidence of a child living in squalor. The Hope's Law initiative, championed by Lily, began to gain traction at the state level, proposing legislation that would mandate cross-reporting between animal control and child protective services. Recognizing the interconnectedness of these forms of abuse, Lily found her voice and her purpose. She enrolled in college, studying social work and criminal justice. Determined to formalize her advocacy, her intelligence and empathy shone through, making her a compelling speaker and a formidable force for change. She testified before legislative committees, her personal story adding undeniable weight to her arguments. She became a tireless advocate for victims, ensuring that no child would suffer in silence as she once had. The relationship between Lily and Ben grew into a deep, mutual respect and friendship. They were forever linked by the storm, by hope, and by the shared pursuit of justice. Lily often reflected on the sheer improbability of her rescue, marveling at the chain of events that had led Ben to hope, and hope to her. It was a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there could be unseen forces at work, guiding a path towards truth and redemption. The legacy of Arthur Finch, once a shadow of deceit and cruelty, was now overshadowed by the light of Hope's Haven. The pain he inflicted was being transformed into purpose, his acts of depravity sparking a wave of compassion and vigilance. The storm that had seemed only destructive had, in a profound and unexpected way, cleared the path for a new era of awareness, turning tragedy into triumph and despair into enduring hope. The conviction of Arthur Finch and the establishment of Hope's Haven marked a pivotal turning point. But for Officer Ben Carter and Lily Mae Thorne, the journey was far from over. Justice had been served, and a new purpose found. Yet the echoes of the past continued to resonate, shaping their present and future in profound ways. Ben continued his dedicated work as a K-9 officer, his bond with Rex growing ever stronger. The case of Lily and Hope had cemented his belief in the profound connections between humans and animals, and how often the most vulnerable among us hold the keys to hidden truths. He approached every call, every interaction, with a heightened sense of awareness, constantly vigilant for the subtle signs of distress or cruelty that might indicate a deeper problem. His reputation within the force had solidified. He was known not just for his unwavering dedication, but for his compassionate insight and his almost uncanny ability to uncover the unseen. Rex, too, seemed to have been profoundly affected by the experience. While still a formidable police dog, he exhibited a newfound gentleness, particularly with children and other animals in need. He often accompanied Ben to Hope's Haven, where he played a quiet but crucial role in the rehabilitation of traumatized dogs. His calm demeanor and steady presence offered a silent reassurance to animals recovering from abuse, helping them to slowly regain trust in humans. The sight of Rex, a powerful K-9 patiently nudging a timid, rescued puppy, became a beloved image at the Haven, a symbol of healing and kindness. For Lily, the path to healing was a long and arduous one, yet it was a journey she faced with remarkable courage. The emotional scars of her past ran deep, but with therapy, support, and the constant, comforting presence of Hope, She began to find true peace. Hope was more than a dog. She was a living anchor to Lily's lost childhood, a tangible link to a time of innocence, and a constant reminder that love and loyalty could survive even the most horrific betrayal. Their reunion had captivated the world, but their daily life together was a quiet testament to enduring love. Hope rarely left Lily's side, her presence a silent balm to Lily's anxieties. She would rest her head on Lily's lap as Lily worked on Hope's Haven initiatives, or follow her like a true shadow through the peaceful paths of their new home. The simple act of Hope nudging her hand, or resting her head against Lily's leg, spoke volumes, offering a comfort that words could never convey. Lily, in turn, devoted herself to Hope's well-being. She ensured Hope received the best veterinary care, the most nutritious food, and endless affection. She cherished every moment, understanding that their time together was a precious gift, a second chance granted by a storm and the unwavering dedication of a stranger. She would often gently rub the faint scar on Hope's neck, a reminder of the chain, but also a symbol of her liberation. The deep friendship between Ben and Lily blossomed. They met regularly, discussing the progress of Hope's Haven, sharing updates on the ongoing federal investigation into the trafficking ring, and simply offering each other support. Ben admired Lily's strength and resilience. Lily respected Ben's integrity and compassion. They had, in a sense, saved each other. Ben had brought Lily's truth to light, and Lily, through Hope, had given Ben a deeper understanding of his own purpose. Lily often found herself reflecting on the bizarre chain of events. How a furious hurricane, a destructive force of nature, could have been the catalyst for such profound personal discovery and widespread justice. It was a humbling thought, a testament to the unpredictable nature of life, and the idea that even in the face of chaos, threads of hope and truth could emerge. The old cottage where Mrs. Gable lived became a frequent stop for Lily and Ben. Mrs. Gable, frail but sharp-minded, found immense joy and solace in Lily's return. She would often recount stories of Lily's childhood, her mischievous spirit, and her deep love for her dog, helping Lily to fill in the painful blanks of her early years. Seeing Lily and Hope together, a vision she had thought impossible, brought a quiet contentment to her final years. The federal investigation, spearheaded by the information Lily provided and the evidence from Finch's ledgers, continued to unravel the child trafficking ring. More arrests were made, more victims identified. It was a grim and difficult process, but each breakthrough was a testament to Lily's courage and the collective determination to bring these perpetrators to justice. The impact of Hope's Haven and Lily's advocacy was undeniable. Contributing directly to these successes by fostering greater interagency cooperation and public awareness, Ben felt a profound sense of fulfillment in his work. He wasn't just patrolling streets or responding to calls, he was an agent of change, a participant in a larger narrative of justice and compassion. The case of Lily and Hope had transformed his understanding of his profession, deepening his commitment to protecting the vulnerable. Whether human or animal, life in Seabrook settled into a new rhythm. The initial media frenzy subsided, replaced by a quiet pride in the community's resilience and its commitment to healing. Hope's Haven thrived, becoming a model for similar organizations nationwide. Lily, no longer just a survivor, became a leader, her voice clear and strong, advocating for those who could not speak for themselves. And by her side, always was Hope, the loyal dog whose quiet vigil had finally brought a long-lost truth home, cementing an enduring bond that had defied the test of time and unspeakable cruelty. Years turned into a gentle stream, carrying the town of Seabrook forward, forever changed by the events that unfolded during Hurricane Esmeralda. The storm, a destructive force of nature, had paradoxically become a catalyst for profound good. sweeping away layers of deceit and ushering in an era of newfound vigilance and compassion. Hope's Haven, initially a local initiative, had grown exponentially under Lily's passionate leadership and Ben's strategic guidance. It became a nationally recognized foundation, with satellite facilities springing up in other states, each one a testament to the enduring bond between humans and animals. The old industrial park, once a symbol of abandonment and neglect, was now a sprawling campus of rehabilitated warehouses, bustling with the activity of caregivers, trainers, and volunteers. Its halls echoed not with the mournful creaks of decay, but with the happy barks of rescued dogs, the purring of contented cats, and the hopeful whispers of children, finding solace in the company of rehabilitated animals. Lily Mae Thorne, no longer defined solely by her past as a victim, had transformed into a powerful national advocate. She completed her degrees, becoming a renowned speaker and a tireless lobbyist for stronger child protection and animal welfare laws. Her calm demeanor, combined with the undeniable power of her personal story, made her a compelling force in legislative halls and public forums. She ensured that Hope's Law, which mandated interagency cooperation between animal control and child protective services, was passed in several states, setting a precedent for a more holistic approach to identifying and preventing abuse. Her work saved countless lives, both human and animal. By recognizing the subtle red flags that had once gone unnoticed, Hope, now a senior dog with a wise, gentle gaze and a soft muzzle touched with gray, remained Lily's constant companion and the beloved matriarch of Hope's Haven. She rarely left Lily's side, their bond a silent symphony of unconditional love and shared history. Hope still visited children's hospitals and trauma centers, her calming presence bringing peace to young patients. She was a living embodiment of resilience, her mere existence a powerful reminder that even after profound suffering, healing and joy were possible. She had, in her quiet way, become a legend. Her name synonymous with loyalty and the power of truth. Officer Ben Carter, too, found an even deeper purpose in his life and career. He was promoted to a supervisory role, where he was able to implement broader training programs for his officers, emphasizing the critical link between animal cruelty and other violent crimes. He often lectured at police academies, sharing the story of Hope and Lily, inspiring a new generation of law enforcement officers to look beyond the obvious, to trust their instincts, and to recognize the profound messages that animals can convey. Rex, his loyal K-9 partner, served faithfully by his side until his retirement, after which he spent his golden years living a comfortable life with Ben, a testament to their unbreakable bond. The trafficking ring that Arthur Finch had exposed was ultimately dismantled, with key figures brought to justice through the tireless efforts of federal agencies. Greatly aided by Lily's courageous testimony and the financial ledgers, the investigation uncovered a wider network than initially imagined, and while not all victims could be found, several other missing individuals were located and reunited with their families, their own journeys of healing beginning thanks to Lily's bravery. The collective effort brought a measure of peace to countless families who had suffered in silence for years. The town of Seabrook became a symbol of healing and community spirit. The annual Hope's Walk, held on the anniversary of the hurricane, became a major fundraising event for Hope's Haven, drawing participants from all walks of life, celebrating resilience, compassion, and the triumph of justice. The storm, once a terrifying memory, was now remembered as the turning point, the crucible from which something truly extraordinary had emerged. Ben often thought about the sheer unlikelihood of it all, a violent storm. An abandoned dog, a forgotten locket, and a decades-old secret. It was a mosaic of chance and destiny, woven together by an unwavering commitment to protect the vulnerable. He had set out that fateful night simply to patrol, to ensure public safety, but he had stumbled upon a truth that transcended his wildest imagination, the story of K-9 Officer Ben Carter, his loyal partner Rex, the resilient dog Hope, and the courageous survivor Lily Mae Thorne became a timeless narrative, shared across generations. It was a powerful reminder that vigilance, empathy, and the pursuit of justice, no matter how long the odds or how deep the shadows, can ultimately lead to light. It taught the invaluable lesson that every life has value. Every story deserves to be heard, and sometimes, the smallest, most unexpected acts of kindness can unleash the most profound and far-reaching impacts, forever changing the world for the better. The fury of the storm had indeed shocked everyone, but what followed was a shock of a different kind, a shock of profound hope, enduring justice, and the beautiful, unbreakable bonds that connect us all.